What happens in the body during HIIT training? So what is HIIT? High intensity interval training is a strategic workout that alternates between quick, intense bursts of anaerobic activity and slower aerobic activities with little to no rests in between. Its main purpose is to combine all of the following into one exercise: losing weight, building muscles, and increasing stamina. So I included the HIIT workout on these slides. So you have to do each one of those exercises for 35 seconds and then rest for 25 seconds in between each exercise before moving on. My link to my workout is over here. So what happens in the body during HIIT? Let's start out with biochemistry. Eating something like a fruit such as a banana before exercise is convenient. Avoid eating lipids and fats as the whole purpose of HIIT is to lose fat and lose weight. Bananas mainly contain around 5.88 grams of glucose, which can be broken down directly in the cells of the body. They also contain around 5.72 grams of fructose, which can't be directly broken down in the cells of the body, so they have to be converted into glucose first in the liver, or they can enter glycolysis at a later stage. So the bonds holding glucose and fructose molecules in bananas are glycosidic linkages, since bananas are polysaccharides made up of many smaller monosaccharides, which are the glucose and the fructose. There's around this much ADP molecules in the glucose of a banana alone, and I actually included the calculations in over here. So bananas also contain sucrose, which I will not be touching on, because sucrose is basically glucose and fructose joined together, and sucrose can also be broken down by the enzyme called sucrase. Now the carbs such as glucose will enter the cells through facilitated diffusion in order to be broken down. They're too big to just dissolve through the cell membrane. So facilitated diffusion is driven by a concentration gradient where there is a lot of glucose molecules on one side and they want to go this way into the inside of the cell, and they will enter through transport proteins. Let's move on to metabolism. So the banana that was consumed will now get broken down by both aerobic pathways and anaerobic pathways, depending on the exercises that you're doing. Some people don't eat anything before working out, and so they exercise on an empty stomach because when the body starts losing oxygen, it burns off the fat covering organs for energy using fermentation. So the glucose that enters the cytosol will start getting broken down, uh, and beginning with glycolysis. So the glucose will start over here. It will become each and every one of those molecules one by one, and here's where actually fructose can come in stage 3 of glycolysis. It will also make a lot of different byproducts such as ADP and such as that's ADP, such as ATP and energy carriers until it eventually reaches pyruvate. Then pyruvate oxidation. The pyruvate will be turned into acetyl coenzyme A while making some CO2 and energy carriers. Then Krebs cycle, where the acetyl coenzyme A will become each and one of those different molecules until it eventually all burns off while creating many different energy carriers. Finally, all of the energy carriers will be brought to the EDC at the cristae, where there is a concentration gradient. There is a lot of hydrogen ions on one side, and the energy carriers will drop off their electrons, which will move from one complex to another, eventually to make H2O and a lot of ADP for the body. During the anaerobic periods of workout, the body starts using fermentation in order to make some energy to give to the body. The human body undergoes lactate fermentation, where it uses a glucose molecule to make only 2 net ADP molecules instead of the 38 net ADP molecules that are made during cellular respiration. Along with the 2 net ADP, the body also makes lactic acid as a byproduct. The lactic acid enters the muscles, and it's what actually causes the soreness or the pain, which forces you to stop exercising. That's why stretching before and after working out is important. It's to squeeze out the lactic acid. Then the lactic acid is transferred into the liver, and it's turned into pyruvate, so then it can undergo cellular respiration again. I can't speak today, sorry. So the glucose, as we can see here in fermentation, it becomes 2-pyruvate, which eventually becomes 2-lactate, and it enters the muscles. If nothing was consumed before working out, the fat stored on the organs to provide protection will be burned off and used for energy instead. So as we can see here, the fat, it can turn into glycerol, which will eventually become 3G3P and enter stage 5 of glycolysis. And, oops, and it can also be broken down into fatty acids, which can become acetyl coenzyme A and enter the Krebs cycle. So genetics. Our genes and DNA can affect our performance while working out just a little bit. So it can affect things such as the flexibility of a muscle, the speed in which a muscle stretches and contracts, and how fast we can lose or gain weight, and how much blood the heart pumps, things like that. So some of these genes can be outtrained, of course, where if an individual works hard enough, the current workout routine will not become an obstacle anymore. Something that definitely happens to everyone while working out is muscle regeneration. While working out, some muscle tissues tear, and so the body has to fix them. And to ensure that the tears don't happen again, the muscle grows back bigger and stronger. So the muscle gets repaired when existing stem cells start replicating in order to fuse two regions of the muscle tissue together. This is of course done by DNA replication and mitosis. So the stem cells which have potential to become muscle tissue cells start out by replicating their muscle tissue DNA, and after the muscle DNA is replicated, the process of mitosis takes place to build millions of other cells. So here's a normal tissue muscle, and when it gets damaged, basically the stem cells will start replicating DNA and then it will undergo mitosis to go back to normal again. The DNA replication is done by the semi-conservative model, and as we can see here, this is what basically happens. So DNA helicase will start opening up the stem cell DNA, and DNA primase will place down primers, and the DNA polymerase 3 will start building this way, and it depends on the strand. It will also start building this way. Another primer will be placed here and builds this way in the replication fork. And then mitosis. So DNA replication happens somewhere here between interphase and prophase. And then I think it's metaphase, anaphase, and telophase and cytokinesis. I think that's right. Finally, homeostasis. So while working out, the body temperature rises, and so the body works to bring it back down to its natural state. So the hypothalamus in the brain detects increase in the temperature, and so it turns on the cooling systems of the body. So as we can see here, here's the hypothalamus somewhere here, and it will turn on the cooling systems of the body. So one of the cooling system is sweat glands, where the body will start releasing water onto the skin of the body, and evaporation of that sweat cools down the body. Another way is that the skin blood vessels start to dilate, or they start to expand. They become bigger. So it increases the blood flow, and so it brings down the temperature of the body. And then when the temperature of the body cools, it goes down, sorry, the hypothalamus will turn off the cooling systems. Finally, the last thing that would happen is that the adrenal medulla would activate. It's located above the kidneys, and it produces epinephrine and norepinephrine. In other words, it's adrenaline. So adrenaline increases the breathing rate as well as it increases blood flow to the muscles, heart, and lungs, and it releases glucose and fatty acids into the bloodstream. All of these factors help make more ADP to provide energy to the body. Adrenaline is known to make a person pumped up, where they would feel like they had some kind of power that they never had before. It's also believed that that adrenaline helps reduce pain in the body, which would help the body give in a few more repetitions during workout. And that's the end of it. We're excited. Thanks for listening.